Hey there, and welcome to a new episode of the Dietitian Success Podcast, the business and marketing podcast for registered dietitians. If you are new to this conversation, if you're new to this podcast, I am your host. I'm Krista Kolajesic, and I'm the founder of Dietitian Success Center. If you have never heard of Dietitian Success Center before, make sure and check out our free Dietitian Starter Kit, our free DSC Starter Kit. Just go onto our website, dietitiansuccesscenter.com. And with that free starter kit, you get a bunch of awesome free tools as a dietitian. So you get a collection of 5 of our most popular client handouts. You get a PES statement cheat sheet. You get a motivational interview and cheat sheet. And then you also get access to our, which is my favorite part, you get access to our free dietitian community, which is such an incredible space to be able to post questions or just lurk if you want to hear what other people are asking questions about and what some of the discussions are that are happening in the dietetics community. So just pop on over to dietitiansuccesscenter.com and join our free DSC starter kit. Okay, so this topic around group programs in business and entrepreneurship is something that I feel compelled to talk about, or have felt compelled to talk about, because I think historically in business, and it sort of depends on how long you've been in business, how long you've been an entrepreneur as a dietitian. I think, group programs, and I'll define what a group program is in a minute, because some may not know what that means. But group programs have sort of always been seen as that gold star, aspirational, I really want to run a group program because that is how I am going to build a scalable business. That's sort of the rhetoric that I tend to hear when it comes to group programs. And I myself, just in being in business for however many years now, and also just having the opportunity to observe dietitians in business for a while now, have really gotten a full perspective on what it looks like to run a group program and what some of the realities are of running a group program, and also some of the pros and cons of running a group program, and what you need to have in place in order to actually do that successfully. Because I've seen many situations where people say, yes, I really want to do this. I want to start a group program. And then things flop for whatever reason. And I think there's actually some very, I don't want to say simple, but I think some very tangible things we can do in our business to set us up for success if this is something that we want to do. But if we don't do those things, if we miss those steps, then there's potential for this thing to be a flop. So we need to think about the back strategy before we go to launch a group program. And the question often comes up, well, can you start your program, or can you start your business with a group program, or do you just have to go right into one-on-one? And we'll talk a little bit about that piece too. So I want to talk mostly about the pros and cons here, and at what point in your business may it make sense to start a group program, and what is some of that pre-strategy that needs to be done in order to be able to launch and sell a group program effectively. Now, if you're sitting here thinking, well, but wait, what in the world is a group program? Let's define it first. So a group program is essentially where you offer the same offer, or you create an offer, you create a program that is designed for a group of people to complete at the same time. So it is like a cohort-based, typically, and there's no rules of thumb here, but typically something that runs for 6 to 8 weeks, where people start on the same day and they're guided through a program over the course of 6 weeks. Whether it is virtual or in person may differ depending on what you are offering. There may be an online course component where people watch through educational video modules that you've created. And then perhaps you all meet as a group via Zoom, or again, maybe in person, for whether it be live workshops or live Q&A sessions. There's often some sort of a community component too. So maybe a community forum where people in the group can post questions, can interact and engage and chat with each other. And I think what's so important about a group program, and one of the things that kind of defines a group program, is that it has to solve a specific problem for a specific group of people. So there needs to be some sort of a starting and ending point. So you start the program here, and when you finish, my objective is for you to be here. So I often think about, like, when we're designing programs, we think about an island A and an island B. Your island A is where your ideal client is right now, and your island B is where they want to be. And your program, whatever that might be, whether it's you working with them one-on-one, whether it be a group, whether it be an online course, is basically the boat that takes them from island A to island B. So island A, where they are now, island B is that aspirational place. So that island B can be, a place where they have less GI symptoms from IBS. It can be a place where they feel like they have more control over their, over their binge eating. It can be a place where they feel that they have a better handle on their blood sugars. It can be a place where they have figured out how to fuel appropriately for the half marathon that they're running, and they've run it successfully. It can be a place where, they just found out that they were diagnosed with celiac, and the island B is where they feel empowered and they feel aware and they feel educated about how to live a successful gluten-free life. And so the more specific a group program is, the better in terms of, what is the island A and what is the outcome that you are really trying to design this program for. Now, group programs can take on so many different forms. And there's really no one right format to offer to offer for the program. But I would say that largely, in most cases, we tend to see an online course component, live sessions via Zoom, some sort of a community forum. So those typically tend to be within the DNA of a common group program. Now, what are some of the benefits, and why do people see this as such a desirable business model or business opportunity? Well, because it is a more scalable way to operate a business, right? Because if we're saying, I can have 10 people enroll in my 6-week group program, and the amount of time that I'm able to spend with those people is, if I were to spend that much one-on-one time with each person, that would be a huge amount of time taken up in my schedule. And if I'm able to bring 10 people into a group program and deliver the same education as I might be when working with someone one-on-one, then that's 10 times the dollar value that I would get off of one person, right? And so suddenly we can say, okay, well, great. If I'm going to offer my group program for $500 for 6 weeks, and I have 10 people in the program, okay, great. That's a really great revenue opportunity versus just providing one-on-one support, which with one-on-one support, you are very much limited and constrained by time, right? There is a cap on the amount of clients that you can take, and therefore there is a cap on your revenue. And it is, of course, also very time intensive, right? You only are getting paid for your direct one-on-one support. So it is very much, we are trading time for money in that one-on-one circumstance, which is not a bad thing, by the way. If that is something that if that's how you want to run your business, and if you like that type of a business model, and hey, if you're just looking for some extra money to, bring in on the side of your 9-to-5 job, that can be a really simple way to do that. without adding any complicated or complex business models. But anyways, that can be seen as the group program can sort of be seen as, okay, well, this is a way for me to be able to scale past one-on-one. And we'll talk about, do you need to start with one-on-one in order to have a group program? The answer is not necessarily, but there are some things that you do need to have in place. And so we'll talk about what those things are. And then the other thing too, that can't be understated when it comes to a group is the community aspect. So if we're thinking about, okay, we've thought about for us as business owners, what's the benefit? But then what is the benefit to the people participating? Well, there's so much benefit that can come from belongingness, right? From being able to collaborate with people who are like me, to know I'm not alone in this. There's other people dealing with this challenge. There's so much learning that can happen in a group when other people are asking questions. And you think to yourself, oh, wow, okay, I didn't even think about that. That's so valuable for me. And so, that can be a really, really amazing component of a group program. And I know for me, just speaking from like when I'm looking for programs to expand my knowledge and expertise in business and entrepreneurship, I often look for group coaching programs because I know that a good portion of the value and what I'm going to learn from that group program actually comes from the other entrepreneurs who are there. Them sharing their experiences about business and what things work for them and what things don't work for them. So it's almost like you're learning from the facilitator, but you're really learning 6 times as much from the people that you're being surrounded by. So the group atmosphere can be super, super beneficial. So there's definitely some very real benefits to creating a group program in your business. However, it's very important that we talk about some of the things that need to be in place in order for you to do this successfully from just like a logistics and business perspective. Because what's so interesting, and this is always what I like to challenge dietitians to think about when they want to launch a group program, is that the reason why it can be so much more difficult to sell a group program and to run one successfully is because if you think about it, like in order to sell a one-on-one offer, you only need one person who is interested in that offer and who is ready at that point in time to purchase from you. But when we're talking about a group, well, suddenly we need to have at least, and again, there's no hard and fast rules here when it comes to group size, but I would say at least 6 people who are all experiencing the same problem. They all happen to be in your audience. They all happen to be in need of this solution and ready for this solution at the same point in time. And so that can be really challenging, and it requires a pretty large audience of people to be able to source from. Right? We can't just have a small little group of people. Sorry, as I hit my microphone. We can't just have a small little group of people, 20 people on our email list and assume 6 of them are all ready to do this program at the same time and are in a financial position to be able to say, yep, I'm game to do this. This is the right time in my life. I want this right now. And the other analogy I always like to make, and you may have heard me say this on the podcast before, but I think this is such an important way to think about sales, because a lot of times, when we're new to sales or when we're new to marketing, we think that we'll just put something out there into the world and people will start flocking to us. When in reality, it's so much more difficult than that. It's not, of course, it's possible, and it is very, it is very, very, very possible to have very successful businesses, even at the beginning, but it takes effort. It's not just if I build it, they will come. And so, we often assume like, oh, I'll just put this thing out there into the world and these people will flock to it. These people will come. And that's really not how it works. I always like to think about customers in sort of 3 different categories. We think of our basils, we think of our carrots, and we think of our apples. So what I mean by that is that some people who are in your audience are like basil, meaning that they are ready to, as we know, basil grows really quickly. It's ready to harvest pretty much the next day, and then it grows back really quickly. And these are people that are like eager and ready to buy from you. They're very aware that they have a problem and they're ready to buy the solution. But then we also have people in our audience who I would say are more like carrots, where they take a little bit longer to be able to harvest, but not too long, but they need a little bit more nurturing. They need more education about you. They may not be fully aware that they have a problem yet that they need to have solved. They may not be ready to look for a solution. So perhaps, they're still in a phase where they're suffering with their IBS symptoms, but, they've got a lot of other stuff going on in their lives and it's just not the most important thing for them right now. And then some people in our audience are apples, which means that they, take a much longer time to be able to quote unquote harvest, right? They need lots of time. They may have just learned that they have this challenge that they need to have fixed, this nutrition related condition that they want to, have some support through. And they need time to be able to learn from you, to be able to learn about you, to be able to build trust with you before they are ready to make a purchase. And so, knowing that there's those 3 categories of people, those 3 categories of buyers, well, it means that in order to really sell a group program effectively, we need to have a large audience of people in order to ensure that you can find 6 who are ready right now. And I say audience a lot. And when I'm talking about audience, in most cases, I am talking about having an email list. And I have lots of content on the podcast about email lists that you can go back and you can listen to. Big proponent of having an email list in your business. An email list is basically a way to be able to keep people in your world for longer, to be able to talk to them, be able to share with them, be able to share blog posts, share podcast interviews, share recipes with them so that you can build that know, like, and trust factor over the long term and be able to cater to those basils, those carrots, and those apples in your audience. And so, I often am referring to email lists when I'm talking about audience, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. I have an amazing example of some incredible women who are in the DSC community who teamed up. So 2 women, I won't speak to specifics, but 2 women who have been in practice for a long time and both have really amazing personal networks of people who are really their ideal client. They have friends, they have colleagues, they have friends of friends, they have community. So they have a big community of people who, when they decided to create a group program, because what's really unique about these women is that they decided not to start with one-on-one. They wanted to partner and they wanted to offer this group program right off the bat, but they were able to source from their community. They at least had access to their ideal client, so they had an audience of people. They weren't starting with nothing. And so, this is a really cool example of how audience doesn't necessarily need to just mean email list, but it can also mean, connections that you have, personal connections that you have. But it's also a really important time to think critically about, do I have those connections? Do I have that community? I think that this can work really well too if you are someone who is going through something yourself and you have a specific group of people who are all going through the same thing. Like I think about how, when I had my first baby, Sunny, I was obviously a new mom with a baby, and the number of then people that I knew who were new parents with babies because of, being connected with people through my midwife group, through my prenatal group, friends that were having babies at the same time, and then friends of friends who were having babies at the same time. Like it suddenly was just this group that continued to multiply, just get bigger and bigger. And I think to myself, oh, that could have been a really effective time to be able to launch something like a group program. If you just naturally have access to those people in your audience. And so, I think that is just the important component, is having to have audience and having to know that, your audience is enough people that you feel like you could get at least 6 people all at the same time who are ready to do this thing or take you up on this offer. And if we think about this proportionally too, so typical conversion rates on an email list, just to give you an idea of how big of an audience you need. Typical conversion rates on an email list are about 1 to 4%. So that means that if you have an email list of 100 people, only 1 to 4% of those people will purchase from you. And so if we need to have 5 people or 6 people ready at the same time, then we can work our way backwards, and we can do the math to say, okay, this is approximately how big my email list needs to be. For in-person audience, that's not the same. If you have a community of people that already know you, it's much smaller, and you don't need to have hundreds of people to source from, because you already have established that relationship and established trust. Question in the chat came up, how to market the value of a paid group program when so many insurance companies are now covering one-on-one consultations. Yeah, that's such a great question. And I think the most important thing here is that you have to remember that people pay for solutions to their problems, and we have to be so clear about what is the solution that we are selling. What is the program that we are selling, and what is the benefit that somebody gets out of this program that is, perhaps different than what they might get with one-on-one. And I think to myself, when this question comes up or when this barrier exists for dietitians, I think to myself, okay, but think about all of the health professions out there that are unregulated and not covered by insurance: health coaches, nutrition coaches, nutritionists, like XYZ. There's so many out there who are offering services that are not covered by insurance, that are launching wildly successful and scalable group programs. And it's because we are responsible for articulating the value that we can provide, and for really painting a picture for someone of like, what is that outcome? How are we going to help them solve their problem? And why our program is really the right fit for them to get from island A to island B. Because people will pay for things that solve their problems, so long as we are being effective in terms of how we are communicating, how we can solve those problems. Gabriella, feel free to ask a follow-up if there's any other questions on that. So another question in the chat: what do you think about maybe having a mostly group program, but then offering one-on-ones on a more infrequent basis, or as an a la carte option for those who feel they'd benefit from it? Yeah, absolutely. And then the follow-up there was, maybe this could apply to Gabriella's question too: insurance for one-on-one, but then the rest of the program could pay out of pocket. This could save them some money and use insurance benefits. 100%. There's so many creative ways to be able to think about this, for sure, and to be able to kind of offer a hybrid of both. But yeah, that can absolutely be done. And I've seen that done successfully. It's like there's an offer that exists for just a group. And then there's a second tier 2 of the offer, which is like group plus one-on-one, perhaps. And so it also offers that really great opportunity. When I talk about strategic pricing, I often think about, how do we ensure that we have 2 different price points for an offer so that when somebody looks at those price points, they're thinking to themselves, which one do I want, instead of do I want it or do I not want it? It changes our mindset. It changes our buying mindset. So yeah, I absolutely love this. It's for sure. You can totally do that if you want to. I think that's the other thing too. I have a dietitian who I work with quite a bit on her business and or have been working with on her business for quite some time. And she just launched very successfully a group program. And really the decision for that group program came from not wanting to do any more one-on-ones, just sort of saying, I'm done with this. I don't want to do this anymore. Which is very fair, right? As business owners, we have to understand when something doesn't feel in alignment anymore, and how might we pivot, how might we shift while still bringing money into our business, and while still delivering on what our clients want and need and what's best for our clients and patients. But yeah, totally. I think it really comes down to, how do you want to offer this, and do you still want to do the one-on-ones, or is your group a way for you to be able to get away from that, to step away from that? Yeah. So, I think that all this to say, and feel free to continue asking questions in the chat. All this to say that when you may be ready to run a group program is if you just want to run your business this way from day one, if you feel like, hey, this is how I feel like I could most effectively deliver what I want to deliver, and I just don't have an interest in one-on-one, yeah, for sure. You could start off right off the bat. If you don't have an audience of people, then you will need to build that first. That will be very important. Another time that you might be ready for this is if you've done quite a bit of one-on-one and you see a clear need for a very specific common problem amongst your people that could be solved in a group environment. So, you're working with people one-on-one and you're like, oh, this is a problem that I seem to be helping people through again and again and again. Maybe it's meal planning for type 2. Maybe it is weight management for menopause. Maybe it is PCOS, nutrition therapy. Maybe it is training for a 10K. That can be a clear indication that your audience is maybe ready for some sort of a group program, because you have people obviously in your audience and in your world who are ready for, who are interested in the solution to this type of a problem, because they've obviously already found you for this. And then when you may want to wait to offer a group program, if you have no audience, whether that be personal, whether that be email list, you may need to build that up for a little bit of time beforehand. If you have very little experience or knowledge in what the problem is that you could actually solve with a group. So a great starting point can be to work with people one-on-one first to better understand common problems that you're seeing, and then create a program based on those problems. Yeah. And then, the other thing too here is that there are other business models that you can try, that don't require a group, but you could still only sell to one person and have it be successful. So something like an online course, that's something you could try if you're like, you know what, I just know I don't want to work with people one-on-one, but I'm very interested in having, working in this space with a group or what have you. You could always start with an online course, because you only have to sell one in order for you to get that off the ground. And then eventually that could turn into like the backbone of a group program, or like the educational component of a group program, once you've built up your audience to enough people. So another question in the chat: logistically, are group programs always live sessions? Does this make it essential to include specific times for live sessions in your marketing? So logistically, our group programs do they always offer live sessions? I would never say always, because I'm sure you will find situations where that's not the case and they rely on like an online community forum or something for people to be able to ask questions. However, a lot of times I think people recognize that they want to join a group program because they get the added value of the community and learning from the other people. So when I said before, when I join a group program, I know that I'm actually going to be learning 6 times more because I get to learn from the 6 other people surrounding me plus the facilitator. So I think a lot of people go into a group thinking, oh, that is added value for me, and I want that component of this program. But then logistically, yes, for sure, that does make the timing piece a factor. So when are we going to offer these live sessions? What does make sense for the most number of people? And I think what's so important there is that you're very transparent about that before you enroll people in the group program. So they know when the times are going to be, and they are joining the program with that knowledge. And they're saying, yep, this works for me. Because what you would never want is for someone to pay hundreds of dollars for a group program, and then they get in and they're like, wait, I can't make any of these live sessions. And then that's not fun and that's not fair to them. So we need to make sure we are transparent about that in advance, for sure. But yeah, I don't think there's never anything that's absolutely necessary. I'm sure you can always find examples of situations where they don't have the live component. I think particularly then that probably starts to turn into more of like a lower priced membership or something where, they may have access to live components, but they also may not, because the price point is probably less. And so they're not necessarily paying more for that group component. Any other questions about this topic? Anything else that needs clarification? Feel free to post in the chat. Okay, another great question. How do you decide on pricing for a group program? Yeah, so that's a pretty, that's sort of a question that is a very much an it depends answer, but I often hate it depends answers. So I am going to give you here's a way you can do it. So what I typically do is when I'm coming up with pricing for a group program, or for when I'm supporting a dietitian with this, is I will write out all of the different individual components of the group program. Typically do this in a Google Sheet or an Excel doc or whatever. And so you'll write out the component of the program in one column. So you'll have maybe 6 times 60-minute live group sessions, community forum, maybe you have a library of tools and resources, whatever else you have included in that group program. And then in the next column, you look at each one of those pieces and you ask yourself, okay, what do I want to charge for this? Now, this can be a really tricky exercise, and this is often a really important exercise to like consult with someone on, or like ask a friend, ask around, ask colleagues, ask even like your friends or your parents who you feel like might be ideal clients for this group. Because we can really get in our own way when it comes to pricing sometimes. And so we ask ourselves, okay, for each one of these different components, what does a reasonable price point feel good for me? And typically that, I always say sort of that price point, the right price, is something that feels energetically good for you. Like if you got paid that, you'd be like, yeah, okay, I feel good about this. And that's why often pricing can be a bit of an individual experience, because everyone sort of has different expectations of that. And by the way, the prices that you choose for version 1 are going to change, because you're going to run it the first time and you're going to realize, oh, I probably undercharged. And so, you're going to want to change them and shift them for the next cohort. And that's totally fine. You can do that. So you're going to go through and you are going to list out the price for each of those items, and then you're going to add that all together. And then typically, what people will do, what entrepreneurs will do is they will have the option where people can pay that price in full, or somebody can pay for that program in installments. So you can always, like if your program is 6 weeks, for example, that spans 2 months. So you can divide that into monthly installments. So you give people 2 different options for how to pay for the program. So that's how I would suggest coming up with pricing for a group program. Just so that you have like a breakdown of each of the different components. And obviously that also becomes very important if you do have a one-on-one piece. So people are going to be getting insurance coverage for one-on-one, is to be transparent about like what is the price of the one-on-one component in that. Comment in the chat. Thank you. I've been wanting to create a group program and step back from one-on-one. Yeah, awesome. But my Instagram audience is small and I don't have an email list. So I need to build that up first. Yeah, totally. So 100%, that's really going to be your starting point, is just coming up with that, a lead magnet so that you can start to grow your email list. Now, you may also consider in the meantime, you could also start putting some of your energy into creating an online course, because you can use an online course with your one-on-one people too. And then that can be something that can serve as the backbone of your group program when you're ready to launch your group program. You could also consider something like a membership as well, a membership business model, where again, with a membership, depending on what you're offering with it, you don't necessarily need to have a ton of people join at the beginning in order for you to just get it started and in order for you to just start building it. So that's something that you could think about too, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, definitely get that email list started, because then that also gives you the freedom to, in the future, to be able to, just offer other things and not have to rely on the one-on-one piece, if and when you're ready to move on from that. Yeah. Any other questions? By the way, if you're listening to this as the podcast recording on Thursdays, we do live stream this podcast in our free dietitian community on Tuesdays that you get access to with the free DSC starter kit. You just go to dietitiansuccesscenter.com, click free DSC starter kit, and you can access our community. And then you can join these sessions live if you'd like to, and you can ask any questions that you have. So the recording for this will always come out on the podcast on Thursdays. So the podcast is the Dietitian Success Podcast, and it is available on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And so make sure and subscribe to the Dietitian Success Podcast, and then you can listen to these as the audio podcast recording on Thursdays. So we record them live in the community here via video on Tuesdays, and then Maria does the amazing back work of getting them all uploaded to our podcasting platform, and you'll get access to it on Thursday. All right. Any other questions? Thank you everyone for joining this live podcast recording. This was a really fun one. I'm so glad we got to talk about this topic. Love this idea of group programs. I think they could be amazing, but they just take some pre-planning, really. So and thinking sort of a little bit more long-term, a little bit more strategic about what is the thing that needs to happen in order for me to effectively launch this other thing. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. And have an awesome week. And I will see you next Thursday.